Hello and welcome back. Today's book is Paradise City by C.J. Duggan. I really wanted to get this one done. It does have a sequel called Paradise Road that you have to read the two together, mostly because this book ends on a cliffhanger, so you're gonna feel unfulfilled. And then when you get to the next book, you'll be like, what in the ever living what? So I'm like, I have to do both at the same time. I don't have time to do both, but I'm gonna make it work. Paradise City, I'm still speechless as to what to say about this book. I'm heartbroken, mostly just because I loved this book when I first read it. My main issues really come down to the writing, come down to the execution, the plotting, and the characterization. And that breaks my heart because I think so much of Duggan. I think she has great ideas. Her main characters tend to be really enjoyable, but I just felt like there's a lot of bouncing around in this novel. And it could have been because I was younger when I first read it. And now I'm older and I'm more mature in a lot of ways. So it was very difficult to connect with Lexie, the main character, at times. I don't know if most of it is because I have a different mindset about relationships or if it's really because sometimes the writing was so schizophrenic, almost like she sat down on day one and wrote chapter 1, sat down on day 2, wrote chapter 2, sat down on day 3, wrote chapter 3, and she was just in different moods that day. And so what she put out on the page came across inconsistent in terms of emotion and determination on Lexie's part. In essence, I do enjoy this novel. I did enjoy this novel. It's a great summer read. It's particularly great for younger people. It's a good book for what it is. I just wish the editing had been a bit more on point, a little bit more refined, but we'll just hop into it because I've said enough already. Main character, 17-year-old named Lexie Atkinson. She lives in a no-name town, so small they don't even have a school. So she's done all of her schooling online, but her dream is to live in the big city. She has a cousin named Amanda who used to also live in Red Hole. Amanda's dad has a job that moved them away and moved them to the big city of Paradise. And Lexie has just been envisioning what it must be like to live in paradise. It comes to pass that she has the opportunity to go to Paradise to finish year 11 in preparation for her to be there for the entirety of year 12. I don't think the beginning of this book was particularly strong. The writing was juvenile, so it was hard for me to dig in at first, outside of the fact that it didn't feel refined. One of the first things that happened that I was like, oh gosh, what have I gotten myself into, is Lexie, she and Amanda are cousins through their mothers. Lexie's mother is country bumpkin, and then Auntie Karen is city slicker who cares about fashion and looks and all that kind of stuff. Lexie's parents are kind of talking bad about Aunt Karen and Uncle Peter. They get to the house. First, Amanda wants absolutely nothing to do with Lexie. But the parents, so her parents have brought this big bucket of KFC, and I guess Auntie Karen, who never cooked before, like, is super healthy in her cooking. I don't even know how it's supposed to be described. It's very Mediterranean, a lot of couscous and fish, and it's just like, did she learn how to cook, or is this a stage she's going? Who knows? It doesn't really matter. Whatever the case, they're not eating KFC. But the adults continue to drink. The mothers, the sisters, start getting along famously, and I'm just like, I mean, I understand the effects of alcohol, but I found it very strange how these women seem to be mortal enemies in many ways, but all of a sudden you get some wine into them and they're best friends. And so that was my first clue that I might have issues with this novel. Lexie, her parents leave, and this was kind of confusing for me too because she is gung-ho. She cannot wait to be in the city. She cannot wait for her parents to leave, but then she's like, I'm not really ready for them to leave. But then she's like, you guys gotta get out of here. It was a little too much back and forth in her emotions and her thoughts, and that is a theme. She will be determined for one thing, and then the next page, next chapter, next paragraph, she completely flip-flops. So her parents leave, and now she is stuck living in this massive house with this family that she doesn't really know, and basically is really judgmental of her, it seems. I don't know how much of that is her being an unreliable narrator, and we're just, everything is colored via her perspective. I understand what Duggan is doing here, because we need to raise the stakes. She has a male cousin as well who's off. He's out of the house. He's either in university, or is he out of university, or he's supposed to be in university but he's not actually in college or whatever. But apparently Auntie Karen is like, no, you cannot stay in his room. And even though we live in a mansion, there's nowhere for you to stay except with your cousin in her room. I wish we'd had a better rationale behind why they had to share a room. I get it that they needed to share a room so that this novel could move forward, but her aunt and uncle are not painted in a very favorable light, and I'm all right with that. Like, they don't have to be great people, but I thought that the characters are kind of one-dimensional. Duggan just needed characters to be a certain way without fully fleshing out why they are that way. They just are. First night sleeping over in Amanda's room, and she's rudely awakened because her bed is right in front of a certain window. Rudely awakened by the fact that Amanda is stepping all over her to sneak out of the house. And I'm like, first off, Amanda, I don't know what's going on with Amanda. I guess she's a city slicker now, and I mean, her big issue with Lexie is she's afraid that Lexie's going to embarrass her, and that she's going to be this country bumpkin that's going to get in her way. Valid. I totally understand it. We're embarrassed of our parents. We're embarrassed of our embarrassing country bumpkin cousins. But she doesn't even know Lexie. She doesn't even give Lexie a chance. The fact that she's sneaking out of the house and literally stepping on Lexie, giving no regard for Lexie, I would have thought she would have tried a little bit harder because she doesn't know Lexie. And if she's worried that Lexie's gonna be a snitch in any sort of capacity, some goody-goody, I would have tried a little bit harder to make sure that I am not stepping on Lexie's face. It is at this moment that Lexie first catches sight of Valentine. She is automatically smitten by the brooding figure standing in the shade of the tree with the dimple in his cheek. She gets to school the next day, and Amanda's like, I am absolutely not going to help you out today. You're on your own. She makes a lot of mistakes. She does have a run-in with Valentine. She makes a fool of herself, but what she also does is meets this girl named Laura. And Laura happens to be the little sister of Amanda's crush, Boone. Laura was a huge missed opportunity. I don't really see the purpose for her, except for the fact that she's Boone's sister. And for a brief moment in time, this gives Lexie some leverage over Amanda. And for yet another brief moment in time, she is an enabler for a pinch point in this novel. School ends, Lexie gets home, and Amanda is sitting on the front stoop waiting for her. And she's so worried about what Lexie is going to say to her parents about the way she treated her and helped her out on her first day of school. So again, now we're getting just more confusing character development. But what Lexie does is she's like, hey, you know what? I'll lie to them about how nice you were and how helpful you were to me, but you're gonna owe me. And what she asks is that Amanda forge a note for her, because if you're a year 12, you can leave campus to eat lunch. That's what she asks Amanda for, is to forge a note saying that even though Lexie is a year 11, she's allowed to leave. But the problem is Laura can't leave. For some reason, there's no way that Laura can ask Boone, who's an expert forger, to write this note for her, so they have to get in Boone's good graces. Lexie, who is bound and determined to... this is when I was confused about her characterization. I didn't know if she was supposed to be meek and mild, or if her true character was really this rebellious spirit who did what she wanted to do and took no prisoners, or if that's what she was trying to do because she did not want to seem like she is the country bumpkin. Whatever the case, she's like, I'm gonna be the new Lexie and I'm gonna do new Lexie things. She's talking to Laura about what can we do that can get Boone on our side about writing you this note. Because what she really wants to do is she wants to watch the boys surf, because this school is divided into houses, kind of like in Harry Potter, and these boys are in the Kirkland house. The Kirkland house is kind of for the layabouts, the athletes, or for the people who aren't really going anywhere in life, but they're also like the hot guys. Laura says, well, their soccer ball was taken away and they've been moaning about it. So I'm sure if you got their soccer ball back, then we'd be in good standing. Where is the soccer ball? It is in the mythical Year 12 common room. I know in Boys of Summer, they do have common rooms, and those common rooms are mentioned. But are any common rooms mentioned or utilized in this novel? Absolutely not. I don't know what's happened. I don't know what was wrong with the old Year 12 common room, but for some reason they are redoing it, but it's not ready in time for school. Which, isn't that the whole point, is to have common rooms for your grades? She goes over to these Year 12s and she's like, yo, Amanda, what's up? Where's the Year 12 common room? Amanda points to a set of doors and she's like, it's right there. And she's like, all right, great, thank you very much. What she does is, instead of just going through the doors, she sneaks in through a window. But wouldn't you know it, that window does not lead to the Year 12 common room. Those doors were not going to lead to the Year 12 common room. They led to the teacher's lounge. So now she's in deep doo-doo. I was massively confused about this, and it could be a cultural thing. She has two punishments. One, which is what I do not understand, is she is assigned yard duty. Totally understand it. You're picking up trash. But she's skipping classes to do yard duty? I would understand if that was a lunchtime thing. I would understand if that's your before or after school thing. But you get to skip classes for this? Anyways, Amanda cannot understand why she's on yard duty, but that's later. Other thing is she's assigned lunchtime detention. She shows up to detention, and who do you think is there? Valentine and Boone. I enjoy Boone. I thought he was pretty funny. He was a great comic foil. Valentine, yeah, totally hot. I was all for it, and I love that she's getting cozy with these dudes. They end up sitting next to her, and the entire time she's just like, I can't focus on anything except for the fact that Valentine is rubbing elbows with me and he's chewing on my pen. They part ways. She totally uses this to catch Amanda's attention because she's caught on to the fact that Amanda is in love with Boone. This then, later that night, when Amanda is trying to sneak out again, she's like, let me come with you. If you don't, I'm just gonna have to tell Auntie Karen and Uncle Peter, who Peter, I just don't. He was another pointless character. He comes into play a little bit later, but I don't understand him at all. That's not even worth getting into. She accompanies them and they go down to the beach. Valentine is there for a split second and then he splits. And of course, that's all Lexie wants to know is, where's Valentine? Which I totally get and I'm all for it. But Boone comes on to her and she's like, oh, because, you know, Amanda's hanging out over there. While he's trying to come on to her, she blurts out the fact that Amanda likes him. He's like, what? She's fully expecting to suffer the wrath of Amanda, only to realize that Amanda has left her behind. Take this for what you will. Later in the book, she and Amanda go to this beach before school one day. However, Amanda has left her, so now she has no way to get back home except for Boone to take her home. She learns that Boone is probably at this bar called the Wipeout Bar, so she's like, I want to go to the Wipeout Bar, and Boone, you can take me to the Wipeout Bar. And he's like, I'm not taking you to the Wipeout Bar, largely because it's closed, but it's not that great of a place. Like, why would you want to go there? So he does end up taking her home. This is also where we first hear about Wipeout Bar's owner slash manager, whoever he is, Dean Saville. We learn the next day because Amanda comes home and she's all loved up because Boone went to the Wipeout Bar and met her there, and they got their little kissy faces on. Lexie, she's pretty pissed at Boone, and I don't know. On one hand, I get it because no, actually, I don't. I don't get it. I would have gotten it if I'd had some more time with this, but Boone is all up in her girl. Yes, she rejects him, but why he automatically is like, hey, you're good enough for me to want to make out with or like hook up with, but you're not good enough to come to the Wipeout Bar. And it really doesn't seem to have anything to do with the fact that she rejected him. It was just Duggan's way of getting her out of the way so something could happen off camera so that it could affect her when it affects her. Touching back on Amanda being like, why are you on yard duty? Why are you getting detention? Like, you are the one who set her up. So there's a lot of things like that where I just don't understand why this is even coming into question, because Amanda knew what would happen if Lexie went into that room. She knew that she was directing her to the wrong place, but we don't even get any kind of indication from Amanda giving a side glance to her friends or her friends giggling about something that Amanda says to Lexie about where year 12 common room is to give us an idea that something might be amiss. The next day, Lexie shows up to school and she's like, I'm gonna play it all cool with Valentine, and you know, like if he wants to walk away, that's all right. We can be friends. They're sitting in detention. She's, you know, where were you? And he says, oh, I went home. She's just trying to act all cool, and she is bound and determined they're gonna be friends, which I think is great. This is channeling my inner teenager where it was so hard for me to talk to boys that I liked because I would get so nervous. So I'm like, yes, Lexie, if you're so nervous, treat him like a friend and we'll get through it that way. But then he says something which she comes back with a response that could be very sexualized. And I just kept waiting for her to continue on with this whole like, let it roll off my back, I'm just one of the guys, we're gonna be friends. But she just gets really awkward. I just wanted her to stick with something, but we'll get into that later too. That night, the boys show up again, but this time, like, they come into the room. Valentine is all up on her bed, hanging out. They're all leaving, and he goes, well, aren't you coming? And she's like, okay. Forgetting, even though we just heard about the fact that she's in her sexiest, skimpiest pajama set, she hops out of bed, and she's like, why is he staring at me like that? And she's like, oh, because I'm wearing my sexy PJs today. It does not go unnoticed that he's looking at her like a man looks at a woman. She puts on her little tank top and cutoffs, and they all go to the beach. Amanda and Boone, they get their whatever on in the back of Valentine's truck. And so she's like, this is really awkward. Valentine says, yes, it is very awkward. Let's go to the beach. They get out, and she has an aversion to the ocean. As much as she wants to be near the ocean and see the ocean and thinks the ocean is super cool, she has this thing about being in the ocean. But they start flirting and having some fun, and he tosses her over his shoulder and he takes her in the ocean, and something brushes her ankle. She freaks out. She's like, I'm out of here. She's racing across the beach. I don't know where she thinks she's going, because whatever Boone and Amanda are doing in that truck, she doesn't want to be anywhere near that truck. Valentine tackles her to ground, just to tell her that she probably needs her clothes or her shoes. I don't remember. Something super superficial. But what it really does is it lets them get hot and heavy in the sand. Lexie, you've been here for 3 days. It has been established that city girls move at a different pace than country girls, but girl, you are moving fast. They get their little freak on, only for Amanda and Boone to then show up because they're done doing their thing. So they separate, and Lexie's over by the truck. She's like, I've been waiting for you guys, whatever. Now they're on their way home, and it's really awkward. She's all excited because she made out with Valentine and she did stuff with him in the sand, and she's like, he chose me, I can't believe it. What? But he won't even look at her. He won't talk to her. She gets really angry and she's like, oh, so that's how it's gonna be, okay. The next day they get to school and Boone is not there, and Amanda is just heartbroken. Lexie is worried that Valentine is avoiding her. She gets to detention. Valentine's like, Boone is not here, he is sick. But then he comes and he sits next to Lexie and, whatever. Then Amanda stops by her locker, and I reread this part because I really wasn't sure how literal Duggan was being, but she looks like death. But she's so upset that Boone is not in school. Of course, it all ties back to whatever they'd done in the truck the night before. No. Then, when Lexie actually does get home, Amanda is a hot mess. Like, she's throwing up everywhere. She is not doing well. And Lexie tries to be super nice and take care of her because Auntie Karen is at work. She's had enough. And she calls Auntie Karen and she's like, look, you need to come and take care of your own kid. I'm not doing this anymore. But that night, Valentine comes, knocks on the window, and then they go to the Wipeout bar. And she's just like, I've made it. This is it. I can't believe it. He takes her into the snake pit, which apparently is this basement hangout where there's pool tables and all the delinquents hang out. Like, I don't really know why Valentine brought her there, except she's made a big deal about how great the Wipeout bar is and how it's like the place to be. And so I think he's just messing around, but I thought it would have been better if it was actually a cool hangout. So if you don't want to be up at the restaurant, that's where the young people go and hang out. Whatever the case, she's like, get me out of here. So they go up to the actual bar. They're having a good time, they're connecting, although this is where we finally actually meet Dean, and he's a hunk of burning love. And she's like, if I was not into Valentine, Dean would be all that and a bag of chips for me. Even though she's 17, he's probably 24, 26, something around there. They're doing their thing, only for Uncle Peter to appear. And I, to this day, don't actually know how he figured out where she was, because she comes home, she's like, did you tell your dad where I was? And what Amanda says is that he had come to check in on her and saw that Lexie was gone and somehow figured it out on his own. I suspect that Dean actually called and let him know because, and we'll see this throughout this novel, we'll see it in the next novel, he is kind of one of those overbearing parental type figures, and he likes to act like he's the boss of everybody. Uncle Peter shows up. He tells her, I do not want you to see Valentine ever again. He says something to Valentine, and now she's freaking out because she has no idea what he could have said. But what he does tell her is, he's like, you know what? If I catch you out with this kid again, you're gonna go home. Why he has such a thing against Valentine, I don't know. It was never explained. I can accept the fact that it's just a teenage boy. Like, don't hang out with teenage boys. All this time, she's thinking he is some kind of delinquent from the other side of the tracks, when really, he lives like a street down in their mansion-filled neighborhood. So it's not that even Uncle Peter's like, he's a bad dude, he'll get you into trouble. No, except for he's a surfer that never goes to class. I don't understand what Uncle Peter's problem with him is. Now they have to sneak her around. She keeps it a secret from everybody except for Laura, who she is feeling so guilty about her feelings for Valentine and the things she's doing with Valentine, because Boone let it slip that he read in Laura's diary that Laura has a crush on him, but there is a point where she doesn't reveal the truth that she is with Valentine. But before that, Valentine the next day does not show up for class, and she's like, he's totally avoiding me. She's getting kind of angry at him. I don't know why, but she's just so irrational. Call it hormonal. I have no idea. She's always so back and forth about how she feels about him, and her determination to be one way or another towards him. Like, you know, they're gonna be together or they're not. She's gonna like him or she's not. Like, all these kinds of things. Like, just make up your mind. Just like stick to something. Oh, actually, what I missed was that before she and Valentine go on their date, she decides she's going to be late for detention because she's mad at him for the way that he acted towards her. And is any of this ever explained as to why his behavior, his change in demeanor, why he was behaving so weirdly? No, not at all. But because of that, she's always getting detention first, and then they're always coming after her and sitting with her. So she's like, this way I can come late and then I can choose where to sit. So I'm going to hold the power. Well, yeah, no, she's 10 minutes late. He's 11 minutes late. So they are both assigned after school detention. They get to after school detention and Valentine is like sleeping on a bunch of desks. And she just kind of stands there and she's staring at him. And I'm ready for them to have some sort of confrontation, for her to continue to hold this sort of power. No, he calls her out for certain things, and then she gets irrational, and she and part of me likes this, but on the whole, I just, it came out of nowhere, and there was no conviction. Conviction is the word that I'm really looking for here when it comes to how she feels about Boone and her behavior towards him. But she's like, oh my gosh, he only messed around with me last night because he needed me out of the way so that Boone could be with Amanda. So she puts this out there, and he's like, look, if I want to be with somebody, I'm going to be with them, and I wanted to be with you, which is then what leads to him showing up in the middle of the night and then going on that ill-fated date. Ooh, actually, what I completely missed, is the night after Amanda and Boone first make out, when he comes on to her. So her relationship with Lexie is so hot and cold. I don't know what to think about it. Lexie never actually does anything wrong to earn Amanda's ire, but it's like, I mean, honestly, most of this takes place in like a week, maybe a week and a half. So I don't know why every other day Amanda changes how she feels about Lexie, but after she and Boone make out that first night, the next day she's like, hey, come with me to the beach. Let's watch the boys surf. They're watching the boys surf. Everybody walks to the bus stop, and this is where we meet Lucy Fell, or in Amanda's terms, Lucy fell on her face, which I thought was hilarious. And of course, Lexie's getting jealous because Lucy and Valentine obviously had some kind of relationship, and Lucy's behaving towards Valentine the way that she wants to be with Valentine and the way that she felt like maybe Valentine might feel about her. But now we are at Amanda's house. Okay, so sorry, I'm having to reread my notes because I keep forgetting things and having to go back. So we're not at their house. This is the day that Valentine does not show up to school. And I'm like, look, if Boone was sick, and then Amanda was sick because Boone was sick, and Boone and Valentine are best friends, it's not too out of the realm of possibility to think Valentine is sick. Does that even cross Lexie's mind? Does that even warrant a mention? Absolutely not. But Lexie is positive that whatever happened with Uncle Peter has turned him off of her. So she's all mad at him and worried and upset. She's at Laura's house, and this is where she reveals, or when she reveals, her relationship with Valentine, because Boone has already revealed that he has a tendency to read Laura's diary. So they're in Laura's room, she sees this diary on the shelf, and she's like, that's probably not the best place to leave your diary. And Laura's like, well, of course not, that's why it's not a real diary. I just like to know who I can trust. And I'm sitting here thinking, it's one thing if this is all geared toward your brother, because it seems like Boone is a chatty Cathy, like the boy loves gossip. But it seems like this is a test that she has given to all of her friends, And the only person who's ever passed this test was Valentine, because he's the only person who has sidled up to her at any point and been like, you know what? You might want to put your diary somewhere else. But all of this talk about truth and trust, she's just feeling guilty, essentially convicted about the fact that she keeps resolving to stay away from Valentine out of respect for Laura, yet she never actually does it. And now here she's having this conversation. And then Laura reveals, well, none of that's even true. Lexie, upset with Valentine about whatever's happening, like she and Laura hatch this plan of a way to make him jealous. But first, Laura's like, why don't you go talk to him? Lexie is aware that he is working that night. He works at Wipeout Bar. They go to the Wipeout Bar. She goes to find him, only to encounter Lucy instead, because Lucy works there as well. Lucy's like, well, you're not allowed in the kitchen. I will deliver your message. She comes back and she says, he doesn't want to talk to you. He doesn't want anything to do with you. Lexie is ticked now. So she goes back to Laura. She does not explain what happened, but what she does say is, hey, write whatever you want in your journal, just make it good. Next day, rumors are flying. Everybody is looking at her. And she's like, what in the world did Laura put in that diary? She catches hold of Laura. Laura shows her the excerpt, and what it is she said that Lexie hooked up with Dean because they had predetermined, they're like, the one person that can get under Valentine's skin would be Dean. She only knows that he and Dean do not get along. She knows nothing else about it. This is when they have their Friday detention. Sorry, I don't know why it's kind of hard to keep straight because it all happens so fast. I wish that the novel had taken place over a longer period of time, but they skip Friday detention so that Valentine can take her to the year 12 common room and they can fool around. He says, I know that whatever Laura put in that diary is not true. And she's like, why? How do you know? He's like, because I asked him. Like, okay, Valentine. She's on cloud 9 because now they are a thing. They might have to be a private thing because nobody can know, particularly her uncle. But yes, they are officially a thing. But she does realize that Lucy had lied to her. So now she's uber peeved at Lucy. She gets home and Amanda, she's pissed. And I'm like, I don't understand why Amanda cares so much. Apparently Amanda is afraid of being embarrassed, but I'm like, I just don't get what Lexie has done that is so mortifying for Amanda. But yes, now Amanda is all pissy. Aunt Karen and Uncle Peter show up and they're all serious. Aunt Karen's like, Uncle Peter wants to call a family meeting. They're acting all serious, like something is gonna happen. Lexie is super worried that they found something out about her skipping her detention because the principal had called. She's afraid she's going home, and this is when they're gonna tell her, you're packing your bags. But no, they're just like, we're gonna go out to eat. Where do you guys want to eat? Amanda, feeling super vindictive, is like, let's go to the Wipeout Bar. So they go to the Wipeout Bar, even though that is not Aunt Karen's vibe, nor does it seem to be a place Uncle Peter would want to go, but for some reason he is like, absolutely, let's go to the Wipeout Bar. They get there and Dean is making his rounds. She's like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so awkward because Dean knows about the rumor. So she goes to talk to him. She's like, hey, thanks for acting so normal when you got to our table, and let's also not forget to mention that Lucy is the one that seated them. And Aunt Karen and Uncle Peter are all like, oh my gosh, Lucy, you know, your dad is such a great guy. Like, you're such a great girl, da 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 da. Dean is telling her, oh, Valentine wants to talk to you. They have fooled around and they still have not exchanged numbers. How can they officially be a thing if they have not even exchanged? I don't know. Whatever the case, they have no way of actually communicating with each other unless he stops by her house in the middle of the night. But he tells her this, and they chat for like a paragraph, maybe, like just dialogue for maybe 10 lines. And then he brings up the fact, oh, should I let Valentine know that you're ready to talk? And she's like, what? How could I forget that he wants to talk? And I'm like, how could you forget that he wanted to talk? Anyways, somehow she gets her drink spilled on her by Lucy. So she goes up to Dean's office to clean up, and this is where Valentine talks to her, but they don't actually talk. This is one of my least favorite things about self-published novels, or even like these YA or NA romance novels, is it's all about the miscommunication. It's all about like, we need to talk, but we don't actually say anything because things get in the way. All they establish is that, yes, they have to remain a secret. She gets to the table, she's wearing just a t-shirt, a Wipeout Bar t-shirt, and she's trying to cover it all up, act all cool, and they're like, well, no, we know what happened. So now there's this whole rallying around Lexie for who knows what reason, because none of this actually stands the test of the novel, and when we get to the next novel, even less so. Now Uncle Peter and Aunt Karen, because Lucy tries to play it off like, oh, it was such an accident, and they're like, your dad would be so ashamed of you. I've got my eyes on you. Da, da, da. Like, seriously, supporting Lexie. And I'm like, where did this come from? Even Amanda. What happened between Amanda and Lucy that dissolved their friendship? I have no idea, but Amanda could not stand Lucy. Then she couldn't stand Lexie, and she was all about like Lucy, like, oh, it's so great that she's our waitress, and now she's back behind Lexie again. A lot of flip-flopping. So, I mean, that's the end of the dinner. We have a confrontation with Lucy. Lucy, like, runs off with her tail between her legs. What was the whole purpose of this family dinner? Why did we have to have such a serious moment just to establish that Uncle Peter wants to have a family dinner outside of the house? Backtrack just another second. When she is in the office with Valentine, this is actually where we learn that not only are he and Dean mortal enemies, they're half-brothers. There's also something, when she was mad at Valentine and she was thinking about how she'd fooled around with him at the beach and all this kind of stuff, like, she's the wrong girl to be messing with if that's all he wants. Only to the next day be like, yeah, let's go to the year 12 common room and fool around a little bit heavier than we had before. I needed consistency out of her, and I did not get it. But at this point in the novel, she is determined to sleep with Valentine. She's like, I don't want to leave here still intact, so I'm going to sleep with him. She goes to his house, which I thought this was super strange because from everything that I'm given, he invites her. She shows up at his house only for it to seem like nobody's home, but he's hanging out in the bushes, and he grabs her and he's like, what are you doing here? Da, da, da. And I'm like, you invited her. What? Anyways, so they go inside. She meets his mom, and his mom is like, oh, I love you. You're the reason he's going to school. They go to his media room, and at first she's like, nothing's gonna happen. We're just gonna like sit side by side next watching this action movie. No, soon the heavy petting starts and things are going only for the actual moment to be interrupted by a phone call from Laura, because apparently Amanda is now at her house, and that is also where Lexie is supposed to be. So she's like, you gotta abort, only for Lexie to be like, oh, let me just go home. Doesn't take that long all the time. So why she had to abort right that instant and go home when Amanda is at Laura's house for an indefinite amount of time, I don't know. But yes, they abort. He walks her home. No one is none the wiser about anything, only for her the next day, in retrospect, to be like, you know, I'm glad that we didn't do it in his rumpus room, because that's not really where I would have wanted my first time to have been. I'm like, a couple pages ago, you were bound and determined to lose it to Valentine, no matter what, and now we're like, well, it's a good thing that I didn't. it's not lining up. Nothing is lining up with her convictions regarding anything in this novel. But now the big deal is that Amanda is freaking out because they're not getting along, mind you, but Amanda's freaking out because she thinks she's pregnant. So they band together, and Lexie comes through in the clutch by going to the pharmacy and buying Amanda a test. And what do you know who she buys it from? A Valentine's mother. So that's awkward, and now she's freaking out because she doesn't want Valentine's mom to think that this is Valentine's problem. This is a time really before cell phones. So she's trying to get in touch with him, and she can't. She goes to the Wipeout bar to get in touch with Dean to try to see if she can get in touch with Valentine, and she can't. She writes him a note saying, hey, I need to talk to you, leaves it at his door, comes home, everything's fine, Amanda is not pregnant. But Dean does show up at the door, and he's like, I got your note, what's up? And I'm like, just like why did you show up? Why couldn't you have just called? Whatever the case, yes, it's just strange. Everybody notices the fact he's shown up. As I've said, he and Valentine don't get along. There was that rumor, and now it's like, oh my gosh, she bought a pregnancy test, and the mother has probably let him know, so it's all lining up to look like maybe something is going on with her and Dean, but it doesn't. Like, you're telling us that's how it's lining up, but the way it's written, to me, I guess maybe because I am in her head, it's so obvious, but to me, the math isn't mathing. Like, I don't know why Valentine would be so threatened by Dean. Like, she's so worried about what he's thinking, only for it's like the last week of school. The next day they go and it's like a free-for-all where the seniors can just kind of mess around and do whatever. And this is a day they bring water guns and water balloons and like flour and barrage people and get them all dirty. Valentine comes after Lexie, and they make out in like a coat closet or something, and she's like, everything is fine, not a problem, he knows nothing, or he does know something, but like, it's just not a problem. So, but she's super excited because that night, and there were like 2 or 3 weeks probably in between, but that night is their school social. It's her first social ever, and she's so excited. She shows up, Valentine shows up, they basically go public, and great night. She tells him, hey, I want you to be my first, blah, 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 blah. She really wants to get the deed done before she goes home, which is the next day. So like, Duggan is really got a tight timeline here. I appreciate it, but at the same time, I think it could have been stretched out a little bit further. So she's waiting for him, and he never shows up. And she's like, what happened to him? We were fine last night. Boone shows up, and she's like, have you heard from Valentine? He goes, oh, I forgot to give you this note. And she's all excited, only to realize that it is the note that she had given Dean. And now she knows that Valentine has stood her up because he thinks that this note is in regards to the pregnancy stuff, and that it really all had to do with Dean in the first place. And then she goes home, and that's it. There's just so much potential in this novel that was unrealized. I would have loved to have seen particularly Lexie and Valentine develop a little bit longer. I'm okay with this relationship just being fraught with problems, because that is what we like in a romance novel, and that is what happens when you're teenagers and you have no clue what you're doing. But I really needed a bit more. I needed to be convinced more that Dean should be a threat. Why Dean is a threat, why Valentine would believe a note that just says, Dean, I need to talk to you, Lexie. What about that screams, you're my baby daddy? When Boone could tell you Amanda fessed up to Boone. So talk to Boone. Just hear their story in general to know this pregnancy test was for Amanda, not for Lexie. Like, it was very watery. I need to breathe. Because I don't want to deter you from reading this book, but it could have been so much better. And I do not understand the flip-flopping of character emotions, thoughts, and relationships. All of that just came down to the timing and then the writing of the novel. There we go. I'm so sorry this is not a better review. I do not know what is wrong with me, why I could not keep the timeline of events straight, but again, it all came down to timing and everything was squashed together so much. It all felt like same song, different tune, you know? Same situations with little tweaks here and there with what actually happened in those situations. So that is Paradise City by C.J. Duggan, and I'll see you later. Bye.